Good morning, everyone. I am Myka Sanchez, and I am going to answer a few questions about the film Eye in the Sky. For the first question, what is the ethical dilemma present in the film? In Eye in the Sky, the primary ethical dilemma revolves around the use of drones for targeted killings and the collateral damage that may occur during such operations. The film presents a situation where a high profile terrorist group is located in a residential area in Nairobi, Kenya. The military and political personnel involved must decide whether to proceed with a drone strike to eliminate the targets, even though it may result in the death of innocent civilians. The ethical dilemma stems from the conflicting considerations of national security, the value of human life, and the potential consequences of the strike. The film explores the complex decision making process and the different perspective of the characters involved. For the second question, make an argument that makes the colonel's decisions wrong. Now, for the colonel's decision to prioritize the elimination of the high profile terrorists over the potential loss of innocent civilian lives can be considered ethically wrong for several reasons. First is for the value of human life. The colonel's decision fails to properly recognize and value the inherent worth and right to life of innocent civilians. By disregarding the potential harm to non combatants, the colonel demonstrates a disregard for the fundamental principle of preserving a human life. Every effort should be made to minimize harm to innocent individuals, even if it means sacrificing a specific military objective. The second is the moral responsibility and duty. The colonel, as a military leader, has a moral responsibility to protect innocent civilians and minimize harm during military operations. This duty extends beyond simply achieving the mission objective and requires a careful consideration of the potential consequences of the action taken. By prioritizing the eliminations of the terrorists without sufficient consideration for the potential loss of civilian lives, the colonel neglects their duty to protect non combatants. Third is the alternative and proportional response. The colonel should have explored alternative strategies that could mitigate the risk to innocent civilians while still addressing the threat posed by terrorists. For instance, efforts could have been made to apprehend the terrorists without resorting to a drone strike in a densely populated area. The use of proportionate force should have been a key consideration, weighing the potential harm caused against the military objective. Fourth is the moral and legal implications. The colonel's decision to proceed with the strike, despite the presence of innocent civilians, could potentially violate international humanitarian laws and conventions. These laws emphasize the need to protect non combatants and distinguish between military targets and civilian populations. The colonel's decision to undermines these legal and ethical frameworks, potentially leading to further erosion of respect for the principles of just warfare. In light of these arguments, the colonel's decision to prioritize the elimination of the terrorists over the potential loss of innocent civilian lives can be considered ethically wrong. The failure to value human life, neglecting moral responsibility and duty, ignoring alternative strategies, and potentially violating legal frameworks and all indicate that the colonel's decision was ethically flawed. Now, for the third question, which is to make an argument that makes the pilot's decision wrong. Now, for the pilot's decision to proceed with the drone strike, despite the non-presence of innocent civilian in the target area, can be considered morally wrong for several reasons. First is the principle of proportionality. The pilot had clear knowledge that the strike would result in the death of innocent civilians. While the elimination of high-profile terrorists is an important goal, the potential loss of innocent lives cannot be justified if it exceeds the potential threat posed by the terrorists. The pilot should have recognized the disproportionate harm caused by the strike and chosen an alternative course of action. Second is the duty to protect innocent lives. As it has said, the pilot has a moral duty to prioritize the protection of innocent civilians. It is the responsibility of military personnel to minimize harm to non combatants, even in the pursuit of legitimate military objectives. By disregarding the potential loss of innocent lives, the pilot failed in their duty to protect those who were not involved in the conflict. Third is the moral responsibility. The pilot bears a significant level of moral responsibility for the outcome of the strike. Despite being aware of the presence of innocent civilians, they chose to proceed with the operation. This decision disregards the inherent value and right to life of those civilians, resulting in their deaths. The pilot should have considered alternative options or sought further authorization to avoid the loss of innocent lives. Fourth is the long-term consequences. The strike's collateral damage, resulting in the death of innocent civilians, may have severe long-term consequences. It can fuel resentment, radicalizations, and increase anti-Western sentiment, potentially leading to further violence and perpetuating a cycle of conflict. The pilot's decision fails to consider the broader implications and potential repercussions of the strike. In the light of these arguments, the pilot's decision to proceed with the drone strike in the face of known civilian presence can be considered ethically wrong. The principles of proportionality, duty to protect innocent lives, moral responsibility, and the consideration of long-term consequences all suggest that alternative actions should have been pursued to minimize harm to non-combatants. Now, for the fourth question, if you are the person deciding in the military mission, what would you do? Well, when faced with the complex scenario presented in the movie, there are several factors I would consider in order to make an informed decision. For example, first is to assess the threat. Evaluating the immediate threat posed by the high-profile terrorist, considering the potential impact on national security and the potential harm they could have caused if not neutralized. The second is the collateral damage assessment, thoroughly analyzing the potential collateral damage and the number of innocent lives at risk if a drone strike were to be conducted in the residential area. Considering the proportionality of the response, weighing the potential loss of innocent lives against the military objective. Third is to seek additional information. I would gather as much intelligence as possible to determine the presence and activities of innocent civilians in the targeted area. Consulting with the experts, intelligence agencies, and local contacts to gain a comprehensive understanding of the situation on the ground. Fourth is to explore alternatives. Exploring alternative strategies that could minimize harm to innocent civilians, evaluating options such as attempting to apprehend the terrorist through ground operations, utilizing non-lethal means, or coordinating with local authorities to evacuate civilians from the area. Fifth is the diplomatic and legal considerations. Considering the diplomatic and legal implications of the proposed military action, consulting with the legal experts to ensure compliance with international humanitarian laws and convention, also to engage in diplomatic efforts to minimize potential backlash and ensure transparency. Sixth is the decision-making transparency. Ensuring that the decision-making process is transparent and involves the appropriate stakeholders, including legal advisors, military commanders, intelligence experts, and political leaders, facilitating thorough discussions and debates to weigh different perspectives and ethical considerations. Ultimately, the decision should aim to strike a balance between protecting national security, minimizing harm to innocent civilians, and upholding ethical principles. It requires careful deliberation, gathering relevant information, and engaging in comprehensive discussion with a range of experts and stakeholders. Now, for the fifth question, if you are a Kantian, would you allow the act? Now, in Kantian ethics, the moral evaluation of an action is based on adherence to moral principles and duties rather than consequences. Kant emphasizes the importance of treating individuals as ends in themselves, respecting their dignity and autonomy. Based on this perspective, the decision in Eye in the Sky could be evaluated as follows. First is the universalizability. A key principle in Kantian ethics is concept of universalizability, which requires individuals to act in a way that their actions could be rationally and consistently applied in the universal law. In case of the movie, one could argue that if the decision to proceed with the drone strike is universalized, it would lead to a contradiction. If every similar situations involved the sacrifice of innocent lives for the sake of eliminating threats, it would undermine the intrinsic value of human life and violate the principle of treating individuals as ends in themselves. The second is the human dignity. Kantian ethics emphasizes the inherent worth and dignity of every individual. The decision to prioritize the elimination of terrorists over lives of innocent civilians could be seen as a violation of their dignity. Kantians would argue that the duty to protect and respect human life, especially the lives of the non-combatants, should take precedence over other objectives. Third is the duty and goodwill. Kant emphasized the importance of acting out of a sense of duty and goodwill. Military personnel have a duty to protect innocent civilians and minimize harm. From a Kantian perspective, the decision should reflect a genuine commitment to fulfilling these duties, rather than just pursuing outcomes that may compromise the inherent value of human life. Based on these considerations, my Kantian analysis of the decision in Eye in the Sky might suggest that prioritizing the elimination of terrorists at the expense of innocent civilian lives could be seen as ethically problematic. Kantian ethics would advocate for a decision making process that places a high value on the inherent worth and dignity of all individuals, while also considering the moral duties and principles involved. Thank you so much.